It's Monday, March 18. I'm Herman Green with the Midday News. A special welcome to those of you watching online at onespotmedia.com. After months of complaints about garbage pileups and a rodent infestation in Montego Bay, St. James, a multi-million-dollar citywide cleanup plan is to be implemented. The plan was recently announced by the St. James Public Health Department. Garbage pileups, a rat infestation. It's been a sore point for the authorities and a nightmare for residents in St. James. But according to Deputy Public Health Inspector for the parish, Sharika Lewis, they have contacted some business operators about garbage pileups in their areas and have already supervised the removal of several truckloads of garbage.
We also have sent a program plan and budget to TEF of an amount of $7.2 million for a citywide rodent control program, which will start from Clock all the way to Dead End and will include all the streets leading from those main areas.
She says while the combined effort is expected to successfully address both the garbage and rodent issues, the health department needs all the help it can get.
We are also seeking additional help from the council to pay attention to certain areas such as the courts, Harbour Street, Sam Sharp Square, Union Street, Clock, and also where the People's Arcade is located.
The health department also reported that for February, there were no new reported cases of dengue. During the period, over 11,000 premises were inspected, revealing that the Aedes index is down. She also stated that 98% of the hotels in the parish have been certified by the department. Ms. Lewis was speaking at the recent municipal corporation meeting. Should contract workers receive full-time workers' benefits? That question was raised after last week's budget debate where the opposition People's National Party, PNP, called for the labor laws to be reviewed. The details in this report.
Last week, during the budget debate, opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips called on the government to reform the current labor laws by giving contract workers certain benefits that full-time staff receive. At present, a number of workers are employed on contract for a fixed term. Speaking on TVJ's Small Jamaica this morning, President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, Helene Davis-White, says in the law, if a person is employed on a fixed-term contract, it should not be a rolling contract. She said that there are cases where contracts are being renewed for up to 20 years.
I have a case with one who is employed for 15 years. Several of them who are employed for 15 years on these renewable contracts. What we are saying is that in that situation where you have somebody employed for 15 years and you really have not actually broken their service, then that's is clearly a full-time job.
The JCTU president says that in most cases, persons who are employed on contract do not receive any employee benefits. She says that employers should consider giving employees on fixed contract some benefits. Mrs. Davis-White noted that persons who were contract workers may have difficulty funding their retirement. This, she argues, would result in increased costs to taxpayers through Social Security benefits.
We have situations in some of our infirmaries where you have persons who were employed for their entire working life. When they retire because they have no pensions and the NIS pension is unable to suffice, they end up in what some people call a poorhouse. Yeah. We are saying that if it is necessary to employ somebody on contract for a fixed term, then you, in the same breath, you should be able to have that individual retain some of the benefits that a full-time employee would have.
She says the current employment law is being reviewed with the JCTU and a small group of workers. Mrs. Davis-White adds that based on the discussion, the changes will be brought up to the Labour Advisory Council.
And in that context, rather than it just being under the Labour Relations and Industrial Disputes Act, that we should have employment law that looks at all the things that will happen during employment. So disputes and collective bargaining issues are one thing, but we also have things like termination and engagement of workers, what are minimum benefits that should apply. Those are the kinds of things that we would want in employment law.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
One entertainment specialist is this afternoon calling on the government to pay more attention to revenues which could be garnered from the cultural sector. The comments follow the Buju Banton Long Walk to Freedom concert at the National Stadium on Saturday. TVJ's O'Shane Masters has the story.
Media and entertainment specialist Clyde McKenzie says the Buju Banton concert should be an eye-opener to the government regarding the possibilities for revenue generation from the cultural sector. The reggae superstar performed to a sold-out crowd inside the National Stadium on Saturday. It's been reported that many of the patrons flew into the island for the concert. Mr. McKenzie says it's time for the sector's revenue potential to be taken more seriously.
What this is definitely a lesson for us as to the possibilities of the cultural industries and the possibilities that really exist for generating revenue from this sector. Because for too long, I think we have ignored the importance of the cultural sector. And I think it's to our national detriment. We have not realized the possibilities for development which are provided by the cultural sector.
He is also hoping that greater collaboration could be formed between the music industry and corporate brands, a glimpse of which was demonstrated at the Buju concert. Meanwhile, senior strategist in the Tourism Ministry, Delano Sivright, says the benefits from the concert were spread across all sectors and not only to the promoters and organizers of the event.
There's no doubt that there was an uptick in the number of visitors to the island, particularly to Kingston, as a result of the Buju concert. All the major hotels in Kingston were full. Airbnb accommodations were also pretty much taken up, and the guest houses across the city and other home sharing residences were also taken up. So it was a big boom for the city, a big boom for taxi drivers, for hair parlors. A whole lot of businesses benefited from that concert, no doubt.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
The PNP's East Portland MP hopeful Damian Crawford continued his campaigning in the constituency over the weekend with another meeting, this time in Berrydale. Flanked by high-ranking members of the party, Mr. Crawford told supporters the tourism product is high on his focus list as it's one of the areas he's qualified to work with.
So when I tell you about tourism, I have a degree in tourism, I have a master's in tourism. They start to say me show up, but if you don't tell them about your pedigree, they will treat you like a mongrel.
He says with that background, as MP, he will be focusing on tourism-related areas such as craft making. He believes visitors come to Jamaica for three main things: friendship, esteem, and self-actualization.
Craft is important for every motive of tourism. The man who comes for friendship, if one carry back something for his friend, craft can be carried back for his friend. So I already get a little raft. I could have carried up with my friend and say, you know where I was? I was in Jamaica, it was great, and I went on this bamboo thing. The man who want to show off, if it's one thing, show off need is evidence. Evidence. Because I've been choosing and cruising on the boat on my raft.
He says craft is also critical for self-actualization, as visitors will have the item as a reminder for the rest of their lives. And still on the election scene, as the countdown continues for the April 4 by-election in Portland Eastern, Assistant Lecturer in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Damian Gordon, says a defeat for the People's National Party would be an indictment on the leadership of its president, Dr. Peter Phillips. The Jamaica Labour Party's Anne-Marie Vaz and the PNP's Damian Crawford are contesting the by-election. Mr. Gordon asserts that the PNP would find itself in a precarious position if Mr. Crawford loses.
Because if the party loses the seat, clearly the party would find itself in a very precarious position, because this is one of their safer seats. And I think that it's obvious in the fact that they have sent Damien there that they're not taking anything for granted, because this is a must-win seat for the People's National Party and for Peter Phillips' electability in the next general election as well. So a lot of rest on the outcome of East Portland.
Speaking on TVJ Smile Jamaica this morning, Mr. Gordon said Mr. Crawford may face a challenge with his message of long-term economic solutions for the constituency, as history has shown that Mrs. Vaz's message of help now is more appealing.
I think that after 50 years of promises unfulfilled, many people have lost faith in politicians to deliver. And as such, the politicians that come to benefit now, that put something in their hands, are the politicians that many persons are gravitating to, in the absence of any assurance that politicians will deliver on many of the promises that they make.
We are not terrorists. The Islamic community in Jamaica is again seeking to teach the population what they describe as the peaceful truth about their religion. At their Awareness Week meeting at the Halfway Tree Transport Center in St. Andrew on Sunday, acting president of the Islamic Council of Jamaica, Shahid Mohammed, said even though there is some differences between other religions and Islam, they all have one thing in common.
We are commanded by Allah within the Quran that we build that bridge between us and the Christians and the Jews. And by doing that, we're hoping that we can reach out to the wider community and establish that understanding so that we can become more aware and more familiar with each other.
Operating under the theme, The Return of the Messiah, the Islamic group says they want to build a bond with Jamaicans and teach them that their religion is not about war and terrorism, but it is about finding solutions for crime and violence internationally and locally. However, Mr. Mohammed said that even though globally the media portrays Muslims as terrorists, he admits that the Jamaican population sees them in a different light.
They're not buying into the rhetoric that we may hear on the media that Muslims are terrorists. That is easily debunked by our local Muslims because we don't have any terrorists on the island. We have never met someone locally or internationally that has these thoughts of terrorism and extremism. Rather, Islam is far away from that. So we find a good reception from the local communities across the island.
And we go now to news in sports. With ISA raking in millions of dollars in revenue from the Boys and Girls Championships each year, there may be a question as to whether they could increase the amount of cash they give back to competing schools. ISA's president, Dr. Walton Small, says there is a plan in place to do so, but it will have to wait for at least another year. Jordan Fort explains why in our Champs preview.
Corporate giants Grace gave $64 million in sponsorship to the 5-day event last year. And this year, they've committed $80 million in cash, with another $40 million to be spent on their marketing throughout the championships. The event is a cash cow for ISA, raking in the largest profits of all its competitions. So could the organization do more in terms of giving back to participating schools? Dr. Walton Small says that's on the cards.
There is no doubt in our minds that the increased funds going back to school will happen. It should have started this year. But we have lost a significant amount of revenue, almost $30 million, which we don't have this year. And because of that, we were not able to do the increase. But I'm sure that come next year, when we put the business to tender, that we can get other sponsors where we can now look at really increasing the amount of money that goes to school. But because we lost a sponsor. We lost a sponsor, significant sponsor, and that money we were not able to find a sponsor to take care of that. And because of that, we were not able to do any significant increase this year. But it will happen because it's something that we were going to do.
Dr. Small was referring to telecommunications giants Flow, which pulled their sponsorship this year, which amounted to approximately $27 million. ISA currently pays $2,500 to schools for every point earned at Champs, in addition to a transportation subsidy of a minimum of $50,000 to each school. The governing body for school sports also pays out a total of $5 million in prize money for the top 5 finishers for boys and girls champs combined. According to its vice president, Keith Wellington, ISA pays out approximately $22 million to schools at Champs each year. The ISA Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Championships will be live and exclusive on TVJ, TVJSN, and OneSpotMedia.com, with extensive radio coverage on Hits 92 FM.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Herman Green. Remember, the primetime news package is at 7. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.